India has about 25 times as much, over 25 times as much use in terms of energy from the sun as we do. I think about Ghana, our neighbor here, the 37th state of Nigeria has 3 times as much as we do. You think about Egypt, 15 times as much as we do. Senegal, 10 times as much as we do. So we're just saying we have deepening. Let's deepen. Let's go deeper. Let's use more sun energy effectively.
Awesome. Okay, so this work was co-authored, and we're going to come back to that in a minute. But this work was co-authored with Olan, like I mentioned earlier. So where did the idea for this come from, and why at this particular time? Because if I understand correctly from what you're talking about, is the research was meant to look at other ways, right, that we can use the sun and solar outside of charge my phone, power power my fridge. So where did the idea come from, and why at this time would you say that this research was necessary?
So first of all, we try to drive impact in Nigeria, right? So we're always looking for people who are at the rock face, who are doing this work actively. Olon is an example of an organization that has been working on energy access in Nigeria for a very long time. So it was a no-brainer that we tried to partner with someone like Olon. And the topic is very relevant. I mean, depending on whose numbers you're looking at, right? About 30 to 50% of Nigerians don't have access to electricity today.
More than.
Yeah. So I mean, I use that big range because there are different numbers out there, and even for the people that have it, based on surveys that we did, less than 25% even have reliable access. Reliable measured as more than 8 hours. Or not. We're not talking.
We're not even looking at the full 24 hours. Yeah.
So this topic of energy access is ever relevant in Nigeria. And so that's why, and we continue to we're moving to a world now too where we're talking a lot about climate change and sustainability and all of those things. And so given all of these things, it just felt like a very relevant topic, and Olon felt like a relevant partner given the experience that the organization has on this topic so far.
We are a relevant partner. I'm just going to say that. Yeah, we are.
That's right.
Answer.
We are indeed. You are. You are. Okay. You are indeed. I was saying where is Nigerian for in the mix really right now? Because it's more or less like this Nigerian folk,
no, but we are partners with you guys too. Are we not a
that's what I'm saying.
Exactly. So all around,
reliable. Let me think. Ask that question. No, I didn't think. Let me think, then, and be sure.
You're not serious. We shall take this offline.
Just kidding. By the way, certainly you are. I mean, the passion you have for this industry alone. Some people will be like, "What's wrong with these people? Like, what are you doing?" But really,
our mission
is
to
quite
make sure
inspiring.
that Nigeria is all on.
It's all
Everybody must be on.
Fantastic indeed. Well, beautiful, and I love this conversation. I love what's going on. I love what you've done thus far, and what you've said thus far. So the research we're talking about through some certain benefits accruing to solar adoption outside of just electricity, which you touched a bit on that, and but another insight is the underpenetration of the market in Nigeria compared to other countries, such as Cameroon, which has that's where I was born. So it's I'm more citizen of both countries now. And Senegal, Kenya, Egypt, and even Ghana. Why is this so? I mean, you'd expect that Nigeria should be on that list. Let's find out why.
Yeah. In fairness, solar has grown in Nigeria over the past few years, quite fast. I mean, I think based on some of the work we did, we've seen 20% growth in terms of the amount of solar electricity we have year over year over the past 5 years. So it has grown, in fairness. The issue is we are starting from a very, very small base, and we still have a long ways to go to ensure that the growth is more meaningful. And there are a few things that are keeping the penetration lower relative to some of the other countries that you mentioned. One is a lot of people still don't know, and even people that know have sometimes the wrong misconceptions, right? For example, the idea that solar is actually cheaper in the long run now than your generator. A lot of people don't know that. So I think awareness is one. But we're beginning to see increased awareness, and we need to, hopefully, this piece of work and the fact that I'm on here with you increases awareness. We're beginning to see increased government, supportive government policies as well to drive growth in this market. And like I said, solar is actually, much cheaper. It's cost competitive now versus some of the other sources. So we're hoping that, this growth that we begin to see more than 20% year over year, we continue it over the next few years.
Absolutely. Okay, and that takes me to the next question I was going to ask. So in the course of the research, right, there were certain sectors that, your research threw up as that solar is super beneficial to. Yes. So do you want to tell us about some of the sectors and, just tell us, some of the things that you uncovered? I know education was one of them. Right. So maybe tell us, just run through some of the sectors and then some of the benefits that, that we saw. Yes,
a good question. So one of the goals of the research was to actually bring some of these tangible benefits to light, right? So that we're not talking about electricity and solar in a sort of in a theoretical way, and perhaps if we talk specifically about some of these benefits, then it encourages more solar. So you look at a place like healthcare. We did research where we looked at primary healthcare centers in Nigeria that had deployed solar and compared their benefits. Compared what they experienced to primary healthcare centers that didn't have solar. You find that antenatal care, which is care for mother and the baby during pregnancy, before birth. We found that primary healthcare centers that had solar, so we would sort of do more of that. Vaccines spoiled less. Schools that had solar, boarding schools. We looked at boarding schools that had solar with some energy storage. Their students could study more at night. Farmers that are using solar, they lost less of their materials and their food. The market women that had solar, we saw that they were able to sort of work longer hours. So we try to look at these specific use cases to make the benefits tangible, and they're quite material, in fact.
Okay, so you mentioned the healthcare sector, you've mentioned education. So what other sectors did you look at, and what were some of the other potential benefits that you saw in those sectors? Yeah,
so we looked, like you said, we looked at healthcare, we looked at education, we looked at food security, of course, right? So the idea that you can we know food security and wastage is a big a good chunk of the food that we produce actually goes to waste because we don't have a cold chain. And so being able to create cooling capability with solar allows reduces sort of wastage. We talked about trade, so we looked at markets. Sabongari, for example, there's deployed mini grids and the benefits that they've been able to experience in terms of reduction in losses due to fires, the ability to stay open longer. We looked at even emission drop in emission instead of using generators. We have to be very, very careful when we talk about emissions in Africa generally, because Africa is not contributing a good chunk. But even within that, we saw some benefits as well.
Just even the reduction in the number of I better pass my neighbor fighting.
Recently there was a tweet I stumbled on. You know how Africans are. Sometimes on Twitter we pick on each other, try to, I love it. Sometimes it pushes people to, do better for their countries, but at the same time, sometimes it bites really hard. So a tweet I saw, this, I don't know where that person was from, but not Nigerian. The person said something, and it said, I would have continued to speaking to you, but you wouldn't hear me because, the generator sound has blocked your ears. That got to me, because I know it's true. There's no defending here, because sometimes they put off there's a restoration of power from the grid, and then you realize how much
noise,
and then sometimes we just focus on noise, forgetting that there's emission involved also. You understand, and all that. So having said that, I know that bite is still biting me right now. So having said that, per countries with high fuel generator emissions, some of them have opted out for solar PV systems. Where are we in this Nigeria as far as this is concerned right now?
On that matter.
Well, on this matter, because they don't insult us. We can't hear tweets. Where are we?
No, that one on your behalf. I'm pinned on your behalf. Like you pin me for yourself. Like
I feel like in Nigeria we're very much, given our size and our style and our culture, we're very much a target. But it's all love, I guess.
Yeah.
So I always like to caveat the emission discussion, because the conversation around climate change is an important one now, right? Like we've just come out of COP26. COP27 is Africa's COP. In Egypt, like Africa is not largely the source of the emission problem, right? So let's just start that as I think the idea that we should build better and be green and all that is great, and we should, but the problems that the world has is not something that Africa caused. This is my personal opinion. And so important to just have that context. But within that, so Africa is not the largest, but within that, Nigeria is one of the largest emitters within Africa.
There's a lot of us.
With South Africa. So because in solar and other renewable sources allow us to continue to sort of like bring those numbers down. And because solar, this sun energy, as we said, is still underpenetrated, we still have a long ways to go. But hopefully with Nigeria Info and Olon and BCG and all of this conversation, we can continue to move the needle.
Hopefully by next year, nobody will be able to look at your Twitter and say,
No, sincerely, I wanted to respond, but I just did some introspection.
You're right.
True.
Exactly, something, just swallow it and just take it. You took one for the country.
And I'm like, okay, well, at least we have power solutions.
Exactly.
We discuss about it.
Keep talking to them about it.
I'm going to share this story again. But beautiful. I love the one when you talked about the mission, the fact that you said that as far as the entire contribution of the world's concerned, Africa is not really as significant compared to other industries. But Nigeria, in the little so-called insignificant number, we are very large, obviously, as you can see in South Africa. And like you said, the truth is awareness will go a long way.
Correct.
Awareness, the fact that people have to understand that it is healthier, it is cost effective, it is safer, it is everything better to have to use solar as against the generating set, and also cost wise. That's where some people have challenges. Say, it's expensive for I don't have millions. But at times you look at the long run, like we always say, you realize that you're spending much more than you would spend if you just installed the solar panel, as it were.
And it's great that you've talked about that. And it kind of takes us to the next question. But I'm just going to also give you a little info based on my past work experience. And it's interesting. A few years ago, I worked for the Lagos State Employment Trust Fund, and I don't know if you know anything about it. So Lagos State would give 5% loan to businesses mostly. And it was interesting research that came up right at that time was that over 60% of the businesses that came to get a loan wanted it for power purposes. So it was either, my gen set is too small, so I need to buy a bigger one, or my this is this, or my that. Over 60% of the businesses, of the SMEs that came for a loan came for that purpose. So it takes us to our next question, which is interesting because, you guys also threw up some things for the SMEs within that space. And one of the things is the fact that there are so many benefits, right, that SMEs stand to gain from, adopting solar as opposed to generating sets. So do you want to maybe talk to us about, some of the ways that, we can change our ways in quotes?
Yes. So one of the an SME type we looked at was actually trade, retail trade. By our estimates, 90+% of our retail trade today goes through informal markets, and in these markets, without a lot of them some of them don't have grid connection. So without grid connection, they use generators. Generators are noisy. Generators, they actually have fires, there's a significant amount of losses. Because if you don't have light and you don't have a generator, and at the end of the day you have to sort of close. We found out they close 2 to 3 hours earlier than they would ordinarily prefer to be open. And we looked at look at a Sabongari market, for example, was one where the Rural Electrification Agency (REA) installed a mini grid, and we looked there and tried to understand the benefits that they that accrue to them after installing solar, and it was quite meaningful. We found that even just looking at fires, before REA installed the mini grids at Sabongari, they had two plus over the past like 10 years, 2+ major fires every year.
Wow.
And since 2018, when the mini grid was installed, they haven't had any major fire.
Woohoo!
And so they've saved. I mean, depending on whether you're going from 2 to 10 fires, they've saved $2 to $7 million per year. So those are the tangible benefits. And of course, you get longer, you can work longer, you can make more money as well. So the benefits are actually quite meaningful.
I know some of the benefits also come to money. Do you want to talk about some of the staggering amounts that the SMEs can make if only they just adopted cleaner energy and as it were. The stress alone itself. I mean, let's even break it down to common things like getting a right mechanic to service your gen or whatever it is you're using. And now there's fuel queue.
Let's just think about getting fuel. I mean, if you put all this together, I mean, in fact, you've explained too much for anyone to start making a decision. I think it has to be a mindset shift, and we hope that conversations like this would do the magic. Absolutely. And even if it's one person that listens today and is changing their mind and saying, you know what, I'm going to go solar, I'm going to plan it this year, I'm going to do it, then that's job done as far as we're concerned. So we take one step at a time, right?
Absolutely.
Our time is really fast spent. There are a lot of questions to ask. I think Jade's got one more question.
Yeah, so let's I mean, it all sounds really good with all the research that you've done so far, but tell us some of the challenges as well that that the research threw up, like share some of those things that you uncovered and maybe like one or two recommendations, to those challenges before we wrap up.
Yeah, so one of it is just money, access to money, right? So we talked about solar, this sun energy is cheaper in the long run, but often it's slightly more expensive sometimes to buy a solar set than your generator, right? Even for developers as well, they will want to sort of get into the business of helping people with solar. They also need some money. So so access to finance, to capital is one challenge. And so and we're seeing government and other actors come up with low-cost financing approaches. You talked about Lagos State, LSCTF working on something like that. So I think that's one. It's just access to finance. There's also just increased awareness, which we're doing here today. It's easier for someone to start a business for solar when I feel like a lot of other people know about it, and I'm not sort of like running around trying to find one client here, one client here. So we can aggregate, with increased awareness, we can aggregate demand. And I think maybe another one that I'll end with is just we need bodies and skills as well. If you start a solar business today, you want to make sure that you can hire people from the polytechnics that would be your technicians, installers and things. So in our schools, in our technical institutions, we need to be training specifically for this industry as well. And of course, I mean, government, we also need to continue to, Standard Organization of Nigeria, we also need to be deepening, creating standards, quality standards, such that when a solar developer buys equipment and components, they know that the quality is high.
Absolutely.
And when the customer buys, they know the quality is guaranteed as well.
I mean, he just gave the answer to some of the biggest challenges that we face as regarding solar in a minute, in less than a minute. I mean,
see, you see, okay, he's the MD of BCG. That's what he does. That's what he does.
You're too kind.
He's a big boy, somebody. Like
you're
that.
too kind. You're too kind.
Fantastic. You're amazing. It was a delight to have you on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
And,
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
And well, we have to end it now and quickly run away. I've done this with Jade, but before I get to tell Jade bye-bye, let's remind you that we talked about deepening solar PV deployment in Nigeria. And Tolu Oyekan spoke with us. He's the managing director, Boston Consulting Group. the Lagos branch. Of course, you know that for sure.
And Tolu's also going to be on Wazobia, so go listen to Tolu's amazing pidgin English on Wazobia very soon.
I would love to listen.
That will be interesting. It'll
be an interesting one. And if you want to read more about
I would love to listen to that, but just I'll listen. Sandra will be on, so at that time I'll be listening to Nigeria Info.
Oh, okay. Oh, all right. Yeah.
Don't worry.
Keep it here on Nigeria Info. And if you want to read more about the research, just go to the All On website. That's all-on.com, and it's also on the BCG website as well. Do you want to quickly put that in your website? So.
Yeah. You could Google it and it'll take you to both the All On website and BCG website.
And then you can read and download, and it's free to the public. So thank you very much, Lagos, for listening. Thank you for having me today.
That's it.
This is the most talked about talk station in Nigeria.